you to be with us. We thank you for bringing back our friend, and that you would give her a good week this week and respite from what's been wrong, and with all those who are traveling today and all those that will be here later, and that the picnic tables would come quickly and be constructed. Amen.
Amen.
I don't want to have to be trying to put together picnic tables today. Screwdriver has too many moving parts for me.
I think the men's group, aren't you all gonna do that with the picnic tables?
How many pieces are they coming in?
I have no idea.
More than 6 would be my
I think
guess.
that's the assembly subcommittee.
Well, the property committee ordered the things.
Can you hear the chatter?
Okay, so you need me to speak up. I mean, that's fine, because I got to get used to levels of volume and stuff. Don't be shy
Oh, I'm not.
about it.
I'm not shy.
We're going to get a placard at church in the sanctuary. When we can't hear, we're going to hold it up.
That's
So
okay.
you'll turn that thing
So
on.
I'll remember to turn my microphone on.
Well, I told them just do like that, and you know what they're
No, what you need to do is, hey, dummy, turn your mic on.
Well, I heard you
That's what I put
fine.
on my placard.
And I don't care.
We heard you like.
I could hear you.
Well, you're not gonna make me feel bad, because it's all about you being able to hear. So if you yell out, "You're too quiet," I'll know that I need to. Because Sharon said something about she was gonna go like that, and I said, "I'm just gonna think your ear's itchy. You're gonna have to say something, you know." So anyway, all right, we're discussing the first article of the Creed, and this is the second half of the first lesson. So we're doing the prodigal son, and for some reason the author of the Bible study didn't do the whole parable. So I'm just going to go ahead and read the whole thing. All right, so in Luke 15, beginning with verse 11. And he said, there was a man who had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me. And he divided his property between them. Not many days later, the younger son gathered all he had and took a journey into a far country. And there he squandered his property in reckless living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. And while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. And bring the fatted calf and kill it. Let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate. Now his older brother was in the field, and as he came and drew near to the house, he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has received him back safe and sound. But he was angry and refused to go in. His father came out and entreated him, but he answered his father, 'Look, these many years I have served you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you never gave me a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him.' And he said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. It was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for this your brother was dead and is alive. He was lost and found.'" Okay. A. What things did the younger son do to his father, and how do you imagine the father felt? Anybody? He was so happy, I'm sure, right? Just thrilled to death.
No.
See what I say about the questions? I mean, if anybody's been a parent, they already know the answer to number 2, okay? And we know what the son did. He wasted the gifts his father gave him. What about the older son? See, we need to get both sides here, because that's important. Because the father deals with both sons judiciously and mercifully, okay? Remember last week when I had on the board and I asked the question, is God fair? Is this a fair story? No, not really, okay? Because now, later on, we're probably going to be dividing half of half. So the older son is going to end up with a quarter instead of a full half, probably. Maybe. We're not sure, but it's kind of implied. All right? So, what do you think about the older son?
Most people probably like the younger son for coming back.
They like the younger son for coming back because it gives them hope, right?
And the older brother is mean.
Yeah.
This is love and forgiveness. I think the brother represents the Pharisees, the self-righteous Pharisees.
Indeed. Yes,
Yeah.
yes he does. And that
And-
parable's told on purpose that way.
Because I think I remember reading in another Bible study, the Pharisees didn't want sinners in their church. The father was able to forgive the son, because the son was not able to forgive his brother for what he had done.
Yep.
And that goes back to, if you can save one person, if you can bring one person into the church, then that's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I've obviously always got a story. So I'm in the Maryland church, okay? I've been there for a while now, and we had a visitor, okay? And because the church there were about 70 members maybe. It was a small church, and the whole sanctuary was no bigger than the fellowship hall here. And that includes the altar. So this person came in, they visited, and they thanked me, for being welcoming. And one of my stalwarts came up to me and said, "Pastor, if you knew what that person was really, what their reputation around town was, you wouldn't be happy to have them here because it would speak badly about our church." And I said, "Well, I'm surprised they came today." And the person said, "Why?" And I said, "Because they knew you were here." Okay. So the thing of it is we do have a tendency, and we're all guilty of this. We have a standard of dress and conduct, okay? Whether we want to believe it or not, okay? And when a new person walks in, no offense, you've been here for a while, so you're regular, okay? But
Like, for example, those two ladies that came Sunday.
those two ladies that came Sunday, and there's an evaluation, okay? Are they going to fit in?
Yes.
And the answer should be yes, but it isn't always yes. Okay? Now, years ago, and my wife has stopped this silly nonsense, not about going to church, but where we go to church when we're on vacation. Okay? She always made sure that we found the local church of our denomination. Okay? So we showed up, and they were my former denomination's practice is not to have communion every Sunday. So I was a little weird already. All right, so they were having communion. So I went up to one of the ushers, because it says in the bulletin you have to speak to the pastor before communing.
Missouri's in it.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what
The
I grew up with.
denomination who shall not be named but is headquartered in St. Louis. Yes, that's how I refer to them.
It
So
was a great place while I was young.
while we were young, it was awesome, and then it got really political and strange. So
I wasn't there for that.
I unfortunately was. So
You had a liberal congregation.
yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, you seem like a nice person, so it's probably very liberal. All right, so I went to one of the ushers and I said, we would like to take communion and I need to talk to the pastor. And he goes, well, no. And I went, no what? And he goes, you can't talk to the pastor. And I said, well, it's in the bulletin about, well, what makes you think you're going to be taking communion? And I said, well, I'm a Missouri Synod pastor. So? And I went, what do you mean so? And I went, okay, my family and I are on vacation. I'm the pastor, one of the two pastors in Clearwater, Florida. So I said, well, I would like to talk to the pastor. Well, you can't. And I said, well, we're going to take communion. You can tell the pastor to expect us at the rail. And I walked back, and I was through for most of the service, okay? So it was St. Augustine, Florida, and it was a warm day, and my youngest daughter had worn a sundress. Okay, so it had little spaghetti straps, and it was short because it was a hot day. And the two ladies behind us, who were of an age, did nothing but talk about my daughter's dress through the whole service. And we went up to communion, and there was a hesitation, but we did get communion. And when we came back, the two ladies came back, and I heard the one say, I can't believe that that girl was allowed to go to communion dressed like that.
Oh.
And I turned around and I said, I am so sorry that you are so self-contained, that you can't concentrate on the Lord's Supper and are so worried about what my daughter is wearing. And I turned around and I heard, well, who does he think he is? I sure hope they aren't planning on joining.
Ooh.
We get up, we're on our way out the door, and I reminded the pastor, because Florida Georgia District's pretty big and there's a lot of pastors, that I had seen him at the previous pastors' conference and I was visiting with my family, and he said, so? And we left, and I looked at my wife and I said, I am not setting foot outside of my church to take communion on vacation or worship with these clowns like this ever again. And ever after, she has honored my wishes. But that is what it's like to be the older son. Okay? And we have to be kind of careful because we do it without thinking. You know? Like, remember when I was here, I think the last time before you called me and I said, y'all are probably here to check out the new guy. Well, I'm checking you out too.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of brought him up short, all right? Because everybody thinks, well, we're wonderful, we're fine, okay? And I have never served a congregation that didn't say they weren't the friendliest church in town. And after and observing, now you guys are, so far you're the exception, okay? You talk to the visitors. Well, what I found was at the Maryland church, and I trained them out of this, they were very friendly to each other. And when you came in, you had to pick your pew and be there for a month before you were considered acceptable, okay?
That used to be here.
That lasted
I
about
believe it.
2 years. And it took me that long to get, and one lady would just, she's the one that I said in my sermon about, you know, all these new people, and she didn't know who they were, and I said, well, you should introduce yourself, and she said, absolutely not, I'm the member. You know, and I told, she was the wife of the other person that had said about the person that came to church. They were quite the pair. So, anyway, so the older son is the one nobody wants to talk about because we exhibit behaviors of both sons, okay? We have our wild times where we walk away from God or we think God's not looking. All right, and we remember I had on there omnipresent and omniscient. Okay, so God knows and He's there. So I always say, if you're going to do something sketchy, you need to give God permission to go to the Starbucks or the Dunkin' Donuts and have a coffee while you act out. If that makes you feel better. But the problem is that He's going to be right there with you asking to hold your handbag while you're doing it. And we think we're getting away with it.
They don't have handbags.
It's figure of speech. Backpack.
Okay.
Okay? So this is a really good parable for us to understand the benevolence of the Father. I mean, and there's one line that everybody reads past, but the significance of it's pretty important. The older son said about how you didn't even give me a goat for my friends. The father should have said, did you ask me? But he didn't, okay? Why? Because he knew that if the son really loved his friends and the benevolence of his father, he would have asked for that, and it would have been done. But this guy was so busy being self-righteous that it never occurred to him that he had needs too, okay? Now, the younger son is almost more honest, okay? Takes the stuff, runs wild, and comes back, right? So, and, you know, a reasonable expectation. I'll just work for you. I'm okay with that. But that's not the father's reaction. What does he do? He runs. Okay, how dignified would that be for an older gentleman to pick up, because they were wearing robes, to pick up his robes, flash a little knee, and run?
Scandalous.
Scandalous, culturally unheard of. The culture of the day was that and the younger son knew this, was to come and abase himself before his father and plead for forgiveness, knowing that there was a good chance, based on the culture, that it would have been denied. But the exact opposite happens, okay? It's almost as if the father's been waiting, watching for the son to show up.
Or hoping.
Or hoping, yeah. And how does he deal with both of them? Because he could have slapped the older son down, right? You know, obviously the older son didn't have much of a personality, because who's going to give up a feast and a dance, right? To be pouty. But, you know, so this is, you know, how benevolent and unlike us as parents is God to us. All right? That think about, and I've done this too. You know, it's like, well, my reaction to you is going to be based on your behavior, right? And I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking, okay? And in some homes, there's strings attached. I'll only love you if you perform a certain way or do a certain function or whatever. And love is a commodity that has to be earned, all right? And so, you know, those types of people that grow up under that, they read this and it's like too good to be true. So there's a lot of dysfunctional behaviors revolving around the commodity of love. Okay? All right. So now that I've pontificated for 20 minutes, how did the Father show unconditional love for the Son?
Welcoming back with open arms.
Loved him and treated him like a king.
Yeah, when he didn't have to, all right? And the astonishing part about the Father's actions, obviously, number one, the picking up his skirts and running. Okay, well, let's back up. First of all, he gave his son what he asked for, which was unheard of. How do you liquidate 50% of your holdings for your son? I mean, that probably took a while, because he didn't just write him a check.
And it probably hurt him a lot.
Yeah.
And he allowed him to make those choices,
Uh-huh.
knowing
Yeah.
that was a bad choice.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and I'm kind of guilty of this. I've said to my kids, well, that's your decision. I'll be here give me a call, you know. But I'm not going to be responsible for that. And when I was the youth group pastor, you know, I just passed out my business card and I said, call me if you need me. And sure enough, I got a phone call one day. A young man was in the Pinellas County Jail. Well, if you know anything about the Pinellas County Jail in Clearwater, Florida, it's because of the water table, it's a high-rise. Beautiful building, okay, till you get inside. All right, and I found out that he called me first. His parents didn't even know where he was. Okay? So we had a little chat about how he ended up there and why, and we had a prayer. And I said, I will call your parents, you know, and I will let them know. And thank goodness his parents they were like, well, firstly, they were just glad to find out where he was, because they called all of his friends and, you know, nobody was talking, right? Because they hadn't gotten arrested and they were all in on it. He was the dummy that got caught. So, but I was always a big one for consequences with the kids, you know. That's fine, that's your decision, but we're gonna let this play out, right? And then we'll just deal with it, because if you know anything about middle school or high school kids, either group, they're gonna try stuff. And even if you wrote the manual and handed it to them with your picture on the dedication page, they are still going to pull it, because they think you've never done it. Do you know how many kids think I came out of the womb wearing a collar? All right? All right. So the father's actions are, you know, first of all, he liquidates part of his property. Secondly, lets his son go with his blessing. Then he waits for him, okay? And then he also, and then he throws a party that, you know, was expensive, probably, and then, you know, deals judiciously and graciously and mercifully with the older son. You know, he didn't say, you know, you're being a putz here. He said, you know, he explained to him, you know, I'm perfectly willing to show you the same generosity. You aren't willing to accept it. Okay? Because why? Like Rita said, Pharisees. What about the Pharisees do we know? Very, very self-righteous, you know. We've got our act together. You know, we can't be around all these sinners because they're just awful.
Now, after all this, I'm sure some of us or more would be the other son that wasn't happy and was very mad because they saw his brother being treated so good after he did such bad stuff.
See, you guys really let a wolf into the chicken coop, because 90% of pastors, when this parable comes up in the lineup, and it will next year, okay, you would hear a sermon about the younger son. I preach on the older son, almost exclusively, because I'm looking at older sons and daughters, not younger sons and daughters, okay? So, yeah, I'm kind of ornery that way. But, you know, the reason why is because I want people to understand that we're both and. Okay? And what my favorite line from a movie, you may edit this later, okay? Maybe not. I don't. People that are going to be watching this know me, so it's okay. But okay, it's a movie that apparently didn't do very well. It's not shown very much anymore. It was called The Cheyenne Social Club. Okay, the last line of the movie, all right? The whole premise of the movie is this town wanted women for the saloon. So he went and got a wagon full of those women. Well, what happened was the men in the town started marrying the women from the saloon, so he had to go get another batch of women, all right? So they show up, okay? And as the two protagonists are leaving town the last time on a wagon, they see the former ladies dressed very conservatively hitting the new group with their parasols, okay? And the younger guy looks at the older one and he goes, I don't understand. And the last line of the movie is, there's nothing so self-righteous as a reformed whore.
That is
I wasn't
priceless.
expecting that.
Whatever year that was, you were probably in college when I didn't see it.
Yeah, well, let's see. I graduated in 1972. This was the mid-'60s, so I was a kid. But my father loved Westerns, okay? We had to endure Wagon Train. What was the one with the mule team?
Gunsmoke,
Gunsmoke, but the one with
Rawhide.
Rawhide. Yeah, we had Cheyenne.
Davy
Bat
Crockett.
Masterson, Davy Crockett, but the one with the mule team too, okay? And every Bonanza, every Western that came out, we had to go see. And my mother said, did you enjoy watching the Indians ride around the rock 3 times? That was her view of that. Okay, I didn't know any better, right? Okay, so how are we like the younger son? Well, sin is attractive, flat out. If it wasn't attractive, we wouldn't want to do it. You know, like I said, if Satan walked in, Satan would not be bright red with horns, a goatee, a beard, and a pitchfork. Satan would be wearing a mini skirt and a low-cut top, or a tank top with tight leather jeans, okay? So that
Wait a minute, are you saying Satan's a woman?
Satan is a woman.
I wanna hear the
a
other side of
woman
this.
well, the other side of it is a muscly guy with a tank top
Harley
and
Davidson.
a Harley Davidson.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Thanks for
it's
fixing
either way. Yeah, you know. So it's like, well, if it wasn't attractive, we wouldn't mess with it. Okay, so that's why desserts look like works of art, right? Okay, you don't see people doing that to a turkey. Number one, the whipped cream would melt. All right. How is God like the Father? Well, he's the absolute epitome of the Father. Okay. Yeah. How many of us are gonna treat our runaway wild child like this guy? Okay.
Hopefully, yes.
Hopefully we would, but the odds are that we may start out that way, but there's going to be a couple of sarcastic comments around the family table. You know, well, I hope you enjoyed yourself, because now we got to work. You know,
I want to ask Bruce a question. Are you sitting here like me, thinking of the book, The Prodigal God? Okay. And I can't remember.
is that a Max Lucado?
No,
I don't remember because it's been so long.
Tim Keller. wrote it, I
Tim
think.
Keller? Okay.
We did that in my men's small group back in the
Oh.
previous church. That was a book we read and discussed. And we had a member of the group, he was an older gentleman, retired lawyer, very political person. I mean, Fox
Yeah.
News all the way down the.
Oh my.
And he
Okay.
started reading that book, and he came in and slammed it down and said, you know, I don't like this. He's running down conservatives or whatever, and stormed out. He was looking at the book from his political life view,
Uh-huh.
and he's like, and he was just.
Didn't come back.
He never came back.
What was his first name?
It's
Oh,
Joy.
You know.
No, not here at another church.
Oh, well, that's.
Yeah, well, I had a good one. We were actually in Europe, and I got a text message from one of my lovelies who said, of course, she hadn't been in church enough to know that I was out of town. All right, so she goes, I just want you to know that we're not coming back to church because there aren't any Democrats in the congregation.
Oh my goodness.
What church is that? I might.
She should not know whether.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's right.
Well, what's interesting is the person she sat with was the co-chair of the county Democratic Party. But you know, that's how little she knew, right? And the only reason I knew that is because the lady came up to me and asked after her, and I told her what the text message had said, and she goes, "Well, that's weird. I thought she knew." You know, then she told me, you know, what was going on, and that they went to another church, and I said, "Well, I don't care what your politics are. You leave them in the parking lot,
Yeah.
all right?
Good
That we've got no room for that, all right? And our home church in Pofftown, we've got a couple people. One will not come to midweek Bible study because her Republican women's group meets that night. Okay? And when she does come, and her husband's there all the time, they're great people. But they have to worm in something about the candidates and the policies. Every Bible study. And I look at our pastor's the big tall guy that was at the installation.
Yeah.
And I look at him and I go, when I grow up, I want to be just like you, only shorter. And he goes, why? And I said, because I would have slapped them silly by now. And he goes, why? I said, because they have made politics their God. And they have, you know. And as the election gets closer, you're probably going to hear me say in a sermon, we need to pray And if we don't pray, then it's our fault. And you've lost your right to complain, which isn't how I say it in private. You're not looking high enough. What do I mean by that? What's more important, our earthly kingdom or the heavenly kingdom?
Heavenly.
Yeah.
I think you said it once in a sermon already too.
Probably, yeah. Of course, when I was in Maryland, that poor church, they're better sermon illustrations than my children. This lady walked up to me because we had started praying in church at the general prayers of the church for the candidates, okay? And then after the election, we started praying for President Obama because he'd won, right? And the text I used was the Timothy text about praying for our leaders. And she walked up to me and she said, "I'm not praying for that man." And I said, "Well, it's in the Bible." And she said, "I don't care what the Bible says." And I said, "We have another problem." 15 years later, they were driving out to Colorado and they stopped for church in Abilene, where I was serving. And she told the whole congregation, "He's the best pastor I've ever had." I was like, whoa. But, you know, I mean, that's, it's in the Bible. I'm sorry, you know. But I've heard that before from people. I don't care what the Bible says. Well,
we know a group of Lutherans that sure thinks that way. It's so sad.
yes, we do. And unfortunately, it's out there, you know. And we're kind of going to get into that. All right, application. All right, can anybody see yourself as the older son?
Yeah.
I think we all can.
Yeah, I think we all can. How was his view of the father distorted? How did he see his father? I haven't brought that up.
I think he saw his father as
I think
being
his father was a
unfair.
righteous man.
Yeah.
What'd you say, Rita?
Thought his father was unfair.
Yeah.
When you're a self-righteous person, you're perfect, and your father isn't.
Mom and Dad always loved the youngest one better anyway, you know.
Yeah.
It's their favorite.
Were you the youngest?
No, I was the middle child.
Oh, okay.
Me too.
Well, I'm an only child and I was not the favorite. Seriously, and somebody asked me once, well, who was? I said, about anybody else. I got the, why can't you be like your cousin Kevin?
Oh.
Or why can't you be like so-and-so? Or why can't you be like so-and-so? Yeah, okay. All right. Are some of God's children are lost? What? Wait a minute. Are some of God's children that he's more eager to welcome back into the family than we are? Wow, that's a horrible sentence. Are there some children that seem that God is more willing to welcome back than we are? Blech.
God's
Well, yeah, when somebody walks in and they maybe haven't bathed, or you know, or they have a reputation that precedes them by 10 feet, or they act a little strange during the service, or you know, or they sit in the wrong pew. You know, we're a little about that. All right. Get to change seats every week, or I write you an invoice. Yeah, you never know. All right, nah, that was only that one couple. Good Lord. All right, forgiveness is not free. What did it cost the Father to forgive his Son?
Give his son away and let his son die and rise.
Well, obviously from what you said, he might have lost face with his cultural people. I never even thought about pulling up his robes and running as something to think of here, but,
Me either.
Well, he gave
He could.
half of everything he had initially.
Mm-hmm.
And then more than that, with the food that he
And then
put on the table.
continuing to give when he welcomed him back, so.
Yeah.
One of the things that this author brought in, which she is leading everything to her Asian background, that I never thought of until I read her little story in the back was, well, how did the father know that the younger son wouldn't have just taken everything again and gone off again the second time and squandered everything?
So
That
he's
never
taking,
even-
he's taking a risk.
Yeah, he was.
Oh,
He
yeah.
has to,
Uh-huh.
But I had never even thought to think that.
He was taking a risk worth taking because he loved his son so much. He was willing to bring him back.
Yeah.
And as
How-
a parent, I think
how-
we all
you know.
would. Although, if you do it over and over and over again, I think you would wise up as a
Oh,
parent,
yeah.
and you may not throw quite
You
the
mean
same party as you did the first time.
You mean the tough love? Or
Yes,
maybe you wouldn't
I do.
offer the cake, but, you know.
God, I know,
But-
it's the best thing.
But the difference between God as our Father and our earthly Father is He doesn't limit that, you know?
Does he?
No, He doesn't.
Thanks be to God.
Keeps giving
You-
us another chance, another
Yes.
chance.
And that's what we got to do.
What?
Another
He
chance,
needs Another chance.
or
And
with
that's hard.
conditions sometimes, you know. All right. Yeah, I love this. You know, well, but what about forgiving somebody that has a habitual sin? Okay, what did Jesus say to Peter? Okay,
Do you
Bibli-
love me? Do you love me? Do you love me?
no,
Oh.
about forgiveness of others.
70 times 7.
70 times 7.
yeah.
What was the biblical mandate from the Old Testament? How many times were you to forgive and then you weren't supposed to anymore? Do you remember that?
70 times 7.
3. 3 was it. After 3, you wrote them off. Okay? So when Peter said, Lord, can I forgive him 7 times, up to 7 times, he was being really generous. He thought he was being very magnanimous. I'm a very forgiving guy. I'm going to double it and add 1.
Maybe they all kind of did that then?
Well, that was the Old Testament, at least, and that was.
Yeah, the Old Testament law was officially, I only have to forgive you 3 times and then hit the bricks. So when Jesus said 70 times 7, was he really saying 490 and that's it?
Even more?
Yeah, how do you compare 3 to 470? Okay, it's an incalculable amount. And since, you know, Jesus basically didn't have a degree in physics, he didn't use infinity, you know. And Peter, being a fisherman, probably didn't know what infinity meant either. So he had to go with something that Peter would understand as an unfathomable amount. Okay, so yeah, it costs. What does it cost us to forgive others?
Depends on what you're forgiving, doesn't it? Or-
Sometimes it's our reputation. I can't believe you forgave them. You know, we've all may have heard that. You know, or what?
Politically and all that. kind of-
we-
I have a friend who said she couldn't forgive because that would meant that she forgot it. You know, that it was just like it was
That-
into oblivion by that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah,
But
that's
she
not
did
true.
No, it's not.
No.
But I didn't have a good defense.
Well, it's like,
Except
yeah, you
for-
forgive them, but you remember their name.
And
Okay.
you don't have to agree with them, of course.
Yeah, forgiveness is not about letting the other person off the hook. It's about finding ease within yourself. And when the cost sometimes can be our reputation, can be material in some way. It can cost us mentally too. You know, it's like, because, well, what if they do it again? You know, oh, okay, well.
Well, people may not even know that you forgave them.
Yeah, that's true. But if it does become public,
Oh.
there's a wealth of reactions to that. You know, something is either drastically wrong with you, or, you know, well, how can you do that? You know, what they did was terrible. Okay, well, you know, I know me and my vindictive little attitude. I can do something horribly bad back at them. You know, so that restrains me from being that way. And, you know, as a younger pastor, I did not understand church behaviors because I didn't realize how sheltered I was till I became a pastor. I thought everybody loved our pastor and nobody ever fought with each other in the church.
We were fortunate in our church.
No, you were sheltered.
All really nice friends. I still am in touch with some that are 90, you know.
Yeah.
We're just like family locked out there.
Well, it wasn't until I got ordained that I realized that, and my own father-in-law, okay, he got mad at the pastor that ordained me, and he didn't go to church till the next guy came. Okay, because he disagreed with something.
He showed them, didn't
He sure did.
Yeah.
he? Linda, by the way, came from the Missouri Synod.
Probably most of us here.
Well, not everybody, but yeah, there's a good few. Yes, I've 33 years I beat my head against that brick wall, and I was in trouble most of the time. Okay, so I found home. Yeah. Okay. What did it cost Jesus to forgive us? Yeah, everything, his life. Are we willing to crucify ourselves for somebody? Not really. I may be willing to take a blister for you, but I'm pretty sure I'm not willing to give up my life if you've done something. I'm more willing to sacrifice something for somebody that I do not have a problem with, okay, than for the other. But Jesus, we were at odds with God, and he paid the ultimate price. Okay, so, and we're supposed to be like him, but that's hard. I'm pretty ornery. I'm a full-blown human being. Okay, if God is our Father, how does that change how we relate to one another?
We want to be like our earthly Father, and even a lot more for our heavenly Father.
Well, hopefully, yeah. But no fun like family fun, right? How many families do we know where, you know, you're my brother and sister, but, right?
No buts in our house.
No butts in your house? Well,
Kids
that's
in 7.5 years. We're
Well,
very
that-
close.
that's good.
I have a butt. In both ways. Both spellings.
You betcha. I mean, as a pastor, I've stood at funerals and just watched all hell break loose. Okay?
I've heard of it a few times.
Oh, yeah. Then, I mean, it's very entertaining. But,
Not me, I'd be crying.
well, yeah, there's usually tears involved. But I've stood there and said, you didn't hear a word I said, did you? Okay. Or how many times at funerals have you got, well, we can't sit so-and-so next to so-and-so because they aren't talking to each other. Or, you know, the good one was, okay, my in-laws, lovely people, both of them, separately individuals, but as marriage partners, okay, so my mother-in-law was in an Alzheimer's nersing home. My father-in-law was living at home, and it was one of the nephew's wedding. Yeah, We were responsible for getting Mom from the nursing home. No, we were responsible for bringing Dad. Which was it?
One of them.
We one, and my brother-in-law and his wife were responsible for the other parent. Okay, so my mother-in-law had been, active in the ladies' aid. She was the bookkeeper at church. She taught Sunday school for over 30 years. I mean, everybody kind of knew her. So she's walking up the aisle and she's saying hi to everybody and smiling and everything, And we sit down in the pew designated for us, and in comes my father-in-law. And the look she gave him was horrible, okay? I mean, it could have stopped a runaway train, okay? So the other grandparent on that side was brought in, and they sat her in between them. so because it was not going to go well if they were next to each other. So this whole how do we relate to one another? It's like, as wonderful as my mother-in-law was, and I loved her dearly, she could hold a grudge. All right, and I suggested for the 50th wedding anniversary that we buy them cabins on opposite sides of a ship, and whoever came off the ship when it got back was the winner. Because it'd take them 5 days to find each other, right? They were, and then there's my parents who, they worked together. My father had his own company in Arkansas. My mother was his bookkeeper. When he couldn't drive anymore long distances, she did all the driving. They're together all the time. And my dad went in the nursing home, and I would come down once a year and straighten up everything because my mother had made a mess of all the stuff, and visit with the nursing home, have the family meeting, and we went to dinner, and it had been a long trip and a rough day, so I ordered a glass of wine, and my mother goes, "What do you got there?" And I said, "A glass of wine." And she said, "Oh, I want one." Well, my mother wasn't a drinker, and she sure didn't drink wine. So I said, "Are you sure?" She goes, "Oh, yeah." And I said, "Well, what kind do you want?" She goes, "Well, what you're having." And I went, "Okay." So I ordered a glass of wine, came, and she went, drank half of it, slammed the glass down, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "If I'd have known your father for 3 more weeks, I never would have married him." And I'm sitting there going, "Oh my, and the only thing I could think of was, "Well, you wouldn't have had me." And she goes, "Oh, yes, I would." and I went, "I'm pretty sure that's not how this works." So that was, of course, my dad goes, because I said to my mother, "You just stay home today, I'll go see Dad." Because they were just, kind of agitated. My dad goes, "Your mother's running around on me." And I said, "Have you met her?" I go, "Trust me, she's not." And he goes, "Oh, yeah, she is. She put me in here so she could run around." And I was like, "No, we put you in here so you'd live longer." That was fun. Yeah, I got a phone call 3:00 in the morning. My mother was in tears, and she never cried much. And I go, "What's going on?" She goes, "Your father's soiled every sheet in the house. I'm over in the apartment. I'm over in the clubhouse in the laundry room washing clothes." I said, 3:00 in the morning? She goes, "Well, yeah, there's no sheets on the bed." I went, "Okay." And then I said, "Where's Dad?" "Oh, he's between the toilet and the wall." And I went, "Mom?" She goes, "Hey, he's not going anywhere, and I've got sheets to fold." So that was, yeah. They were fun. Okay, so how do we relate to one another? All right, we don't leave them stuck between the toilet and the wall. Okay, there's, we're as Christian as we can be. not everybody is going to receive it. I mean, I'm pretty sure that the older son and the younger son didn't have much to say to each other for a long time, if ever.
Yeah.
All right? There are people that are part of the body of Christ that are just extra grace required. Okay? We don't agree with everybody on every little thing. We do our best to understand the motivations behind, okay? And if there's one thing that I've learned over the years as a pastor, when somebody comes at me, and they do, mainly because I'm not quiet, okay? They're usually coming at me because they're scared of something. And I got to figure out what that is. Now, in the past, I didn't look at it that way. And it was tough for me, okay? Because I didn't understand people talking to their pastor like that, okay? Because I wouldn't have dreamed of it myself when I was growing up, okay? And that's how I try to get people, when there's disagreement and conflict, what's the fear here? Okay? What's going on that who on what side needs reassurance for what? Okay. So the younger son, what did he need reassurance about? We do it for time. This will be our finish. What did he need reassurance about?
He's still part of that family. And
Yeah. Am I going to be accepted? Because he was expecting, it's probably for a car warranty.
Sorry, can y'all hear it? I heard it through my hearing aid.
Oh.
Did y'all hear it ring?
It was pretty.
Came out the other ear.
Yeah. It went poof, your hair just went poof.
He needed acceptance and forgiveness
Right.
and love.
Yeah, and he was probably expecting what the older brother gave him. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
by the same token, what about the father? What was he expecting?
I don't think the father was expecting anything except his son came home and
Well,
We're a family again.
he was expecting the son to come home. What was he expecting of the older son?
To accept it.
Yeah.
Understanding, yeah. And what about the older son? What was his expectation?
He was expecting father to pounce on him and throw him out again.
Yeah, let him have it. I'll pop popcorn and watch this one, right?
Yeah.
You know, and yeah. So, you know, whose behaviors were the best of the bunch? Dad's,
Dads.
obviously,
The
dad's. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, she has a prayer prompt here. We'll close with that. Father God, show us our sin. Reveal the things we have thought, said, and done that are not pleasing to you. Forgive us for our disloyalty and the pain we've caused you, but also for our unforgiveness and unwillingness to welcome back lost siblings. Amen. Okay, you need to turn that off, and I'll give you one of my grandmother's famous quotes because hers